When we first reported on NBC's Brian Williams last Friday, we all assumed another shoe would drop, and it did. This week, the network announced that Williams is suspended without pay for 6 months for misrepresenting what happened to him in Iraq 12 years ago. Now, though, it appears the network is taking a closer look at more exaggerated claims. A week ago, Brian Williams was hoping his apology over claims that he was aboard a helicopter under fire in 2003 would be enough.
I made a mistake in recalling the events of 12 years ago.
But instead of making matters better, he made things worse, leading Williams to take himself off the air for a few days with Lester Holt filling in.
Reporting tonight, Lester Holt.
But over the weekend, high-ranking NBC officials determined that more severe action was necessary. News President Deborah Turnus also suggested Williams might have exaggerated about other stories, writing to staff, "We have concerns about comments made outside NBC News while Brian was talking about his experiences in the field." Apparently, that included anecdotes about Hurricane Katrina, like this one.
When you look out of your hotel room window in the French Quarter and watch a man float by face down.
Meanwhile, Stephen Burke, head of NBC Universal, was even tougher on Williams, saying, "By his actions, Brian has jeopardized the trust millions of Americans place in NBC News," adding, "He deserves a second chance, and we are rooting for him." But virtually everyone believes that will be an uphill battle. This Jon Stewart roundup of pundits says it all.
This is a huge credibility crisis.
Credibility and trust are what we go off of, what we stand for.
If they care about credibility, he should no longer be managing editor and anchor.
I'm stunned that you're not asking for him to be fired, Megyn.
6 months is a lot of news cycles, and it's doubtful NBC wants to cycle back to this one, which will happen if Brian Williams comes back to anchor the nightly news. I can't figure out whether I feel like this is piling on or whether the floodgates just need to open and, the dam falls or whatever. There was a report out today that he might have exaggerated claims that he flew with Navy SEAL Team 6, which is the one that, of course, that went into Baghdad and, took down Osama bin Laden. And they're saying there's no way that happened. There's a number of other stories that have come out. A lot of these stories took place on the Letterman show or outside of the newscast, but still, I don't know. I mean, isn't the damage done? Do we need more?
No, the damage is done. And, I don't think anybody believes he's going to come back after 6 months. I wouldn't be surprised if a settlement is being negotiated even as we tape this show. That seems to be just a fig leaf. Because the NBC statement that came out was very harsh.
It was.
They took his name off the newscast immediately. And the investigation continues. So I don't think anybody really expects that he's going to go. In terms of this being overly harsh, these are very privileged positions. I mean, he was working with a $10 million a year contract. Nobody is entitled to that. He broke his trust with his audience. I just don't see how he'll come back from this.
I think the key moment of this week was the break. I think it was New York Magazine that first had it, that he had asked to be considered to be the new head, a host of the Tonight Show after when Jay Leno was leaving. If there was anything that you could not imagine Bob Simon doing, if you ever want to draw a distinction between someone who spent decades as a foreign correspondent in war zones versus someone who apparently didn't see a big boundary between asking young Hollywood actors and actresses light questions and being the head of NBC News, that was really telling to me. I think once last week happened, looking back on how he has presented himself as a public figure in the entertainment space, I think instead of this being piled on, this is a moment to look back and see there wasn't something right all along. I think it's very unlikely he'll be back.
Well, I think there's a bigger question raised too. I mean, he's a particular case, but a colleague of ours, Emily Azita Garamani, said in the newsroom recently that she thought there was a big problem when you have people like Brian Williams, who are supposed to be straight newsmen, going on entertainment shows like Letterman or Leno or whatever else and turning themselves into entertainers. Now, some people can do it and not do the things that Brian Williams did, certainly, but that's a blurring of the lines, which I think is sort of taken for granted nowadays. You can be a serious journalist, but you're going to go cut up on Letterman with Jimmy Fallon or whatever, and maybe it shouldn't be because there's an impulse there to entertain and maybe to gild the lily a little bit in a way you shouldn't. Again, not everyone does what Brian Williams did, but that is a problematic link, I think.
Yeah. I do think that he used the word, how he conflated events, which is how he got in trouble. Talked about the incidents with the two helicopters. And I do think, you don't want to do a psychoanalysis here, but I do think that you start to conflate the world of entertainment with the world of news to the point where he felt what was very important here is to be able to tell the best story in any room he was in, even if he had to embellish that story, and it got away from him.
But I said this last week. Where were the executives? Where was his wife? Where were people? I mean, everybody knew. Where were the crews that were with him? Where's the crew that flew with him on, with Navy SEAL Team 6? I mean, nobody says, no, wait a minute. More is going to happen. I'm just going to predict that right now. This could go all the way to.
We've also heard about him embellishing a tale about meeting the Pope, perhaps. He may have done that. Also, a story about. I'm blanking on it now. We were discussing.
The puppies.
Thank you. Yes.
The puppies. I would argue too that we're in an era where you have to be able to go on a variety of media and get the brand out and tell your story. And if he's not capable of doing that in an honest and ethical way, then the problem isn't that he's going on entertainment shows. The problem is he can't tell the truth.
Oh, the story I was thinking of was him saying he was there when the Berlin Wall came down. Which he may have exaggerated too.
I think you shouldn't overlook now. Immediately, Lester Holt slid into that slot. According, we're only looking at a few days here, but the ratings haven't at all sagged. Even part of it may be curiosity to see what may happen.
And he's
next.
been very good for years.
But he's been very good for years. I think you look 6 months down the road, if Lester Holt has continued to do what he appears capable of doing, dislodging him, regardless of what Brian Williams may do, is going to be difficult, if not impossible.
Do you all remember that spoof video that Williams made on one of those occasions when he was stepping into the world of entertainment? And it was basically a send-up of him as this pompous, self-absorbed character. He talked about standing outside Rockefeller Center, waiting for people to recognize him and say, hey, it's Brian Williams. And some guy comes by and says, hey, Stone Phillips. And you hear Williams say in the voiceover, close enough. And sort of not. It was hilarious. And now it's hard not to think of that very self-deprecating video he made in the context of all this and wonder how much self-loathing might have been at work there.